I don't know, just started. It's recording.
Jetzt muss ich erstmal überlegen, was Kampfgeist in Englisch ist.
Kampfgeist in English, please. Wow. Yeah, we are mittendrin. Fighting. Spirit.
Vielleicht Rebellion.
Rebellion.
Ja, macht das Sinn für dich, das Wort?
I take it.
Take it.
I take it. Rebellion. Yeah. Someone called me yesterday, you're like Che Guevara. You have this Che Guevara spirit. In me it was like, yeah.
There you go.
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of me. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Totally resonating.
Do you want me to look? Soll ich in die Kamera gucken oder dich angucken? Was ist die?
How do you feel comfortable? Okay. Yeah, just higher your voice, please.
Yes. Okay, we're right there. We're in the right middle. Yes. We're at rebellion, female rebellion, and
we spoke about the new law.
Yes, I just mentioned the change in the law in the United States about the abortion rights, and that abortion now is a criminal act in the United States, and then we started talking about what it means to be enraged as a woman, what it means to fight for something and to stand up for something. And you were asking me the question, how can I be angry, or how can I be with rage and still be soft in it? Yes. Mm-hmm. And I feel two things in that because one thing is, I think it's absolutely possible to be that, and I think it's possible to feel an intensity and still ground in that feeling and stay soft as it comes up, and it doesn't need to explode, but I can first be with it myself before I go out and communicate it into the world or into someone else, to someone else. And at the same time, I also believe that there's contexts where that rage, unfiltered, is necessary. Unfiltered and grounded, like constructive rage. Because we spoke about before, what does it mean to be a woman? And I think there's a grand softening in everyone, yet, which is amazing. I think we need that. I think, especially, I just said to you, for me, at least growing up in Germany, I feel I was almost like in a hard shell. I grew up like this, and to me, to come into that yin energy and that softer energy, it required for me to actually soften my body, to soften my voice, to soften my skin, to really go into places where that softness is there and it's allowed. And at the same time, I think I said to you before that I really don't feel that we need to define what it means to be feminine or what it means to be a woman. Also because I think right now in the world there's so much shifting and so much morphing of what it actually means to just exist and be a human. And at the same time there's these two energies, the yin and the yang, if we don't want to put gender words on it because they're very charged. So for me, what I notice as a woman, or as someone who identifies as a woman, I almost feel like in that process of softening that it becomes an expectation, that the expectation towards women is to be soft, to be be sweet, like this, yeah? And I think there's truth to that. And at the same time, I also think we can be loud and we can be furious and we can be angry, and that's also okay. So me personally, I don't want to move in a space where I feel once I'm not soft, I'm not a woman anymore. Because it's not about staying in one thing at all times, but to move in between, because we all, in the end, we unite those two energies, yeah, the yang, also the power, the fire, and I think that's also something that women have. Women give birth. It's insane. You've experienced it, yeah, and you need that power, and it's there, and it lives in our bodies, and it lives in our bellies, and in our pelvis, and in our feet, and we have. You said to me earlier the connection to the nature, the earth, and I think it's more nuanced than just being soft or just being connected. I think there's also somewhere where we words anger comes in many different forms and there's anger that is like this big because it reaches so many women, and it's so ancestral, and it's so that I think it needs some loudness. And at the same time, anger needs action. Saying no is an action.
Yes,
that's already something. Now if we talk about abortion rights, just me being here, this is not right. It does something to me because I'm like, it activates my own something is wrong in the world, and it's going to give me the power and the activation to go and do something about it. And so if I keep that no very small, and I'm just like, I'm here and I'm angry and I feel like I should change it, then that power is never going to be generated. So I feel like when it comes to anger, there's always a connection to aggression. Anger also often comes as a secondary emotion.
Yeah.
That means that the anger is almost like a protector in front of another emotion, like maybe grief or embarrassment, shame, something like that. And sometimes anger is the one that we put in front of that because we don't want to feel that primary emotion. And for example, there's as women, as people who identify as women and who grow up in a very role-oriented society like we did, we learn shame before anger, and men learn anger before shame, for example, or they learn anger before sadness. And so sometimes we generate anger, or we come with anger, but it's not actually what we're feeling, but that's what we learned. So we have a difficulty identifying what we're actually feeling, because for us it can be shame comes before anything else. And that's a very general expression now. It may be very different for some other people, but it can be like that. That we feel something instead of feeling something else, because that's what we learned to feel. That's what we were told to feel. And as women, we're shamed a lot for many things, abortion included, apparently. And I think also very, very complex now. Now we're in, who are we as a society? What do we teach our kids about? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Like, who cares about that anymore? How can we be humans? How can we be together and accept each other for who we are? And that sounds very accept each other for who we are, but I really, really deeply believe that that's what we have to do. That we stop chasing what it means to be this, what it means to be that, and we stop with these words that we put on things that need to be felt. Because there are women who are stronger and they're masculine, and that's totally fine. It doesn't mean that they're less of a woman than someone else who identifies as a woman and is maybe very soft. Yes, I think we need to restore that feeling for nuances, for the things in between, for the little details. Does it make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally can follow and agree with you also. Yeah, I can see that. was the question came up, when or how did you start to realize all this, like destructing all these feelings and getting to know with it? And I mean, to me it sounds like you walked a really long journey to come to this point. So can you tell something about it?
Yes, I do have a relationship with anger. And I used to be very ashamed of my anger, which I think a lot of women feel. Yeah, a lot of women feel ashamed because we are taught shame before anger, for example. Because we need to learn how to say no in a society that thinks that it can cross women's boundaries over and over and over again. And now it's even happening on a very large scale with that abortion right. So I used to
it's getting louder.
I used to be very frozen, like very caught inside of my body, inside of my own system, because I have a very high sensitivity, whatever that means, but I feel like that I like feeling, which I think is something that gave me the feeling that I don't belong for a very, very long time in my life. And I had a really deep sadness, actually. Sadness was a weight that was on me. So whenever I would go into, we grow up, we start having our strategies to not feel something, or to just adapt to our environment, to fit in to where we are, and do it like the other people do it. I mean, at least that's what it was for me, I think. So I kept myself in, and then whenever I would open, I'd feel sadness and separation. And once I slowly in my late 20s or like early 30s, I started moving. I started getting into dance and movement. And it started with actually very classic dance classes, like hip hop dance classes, house dance classes. Like, ooh, actually my body can move, because before it was more like, and then I started opening up this frozen body. And with that came a lot of anger. So for me, actually, it was not what I said before, that anger was a secondary emotion and was protecting my sadness, but I feel like my sadness was protecting my anger. Because it was easier to be sad. Because people are like, oh, you're sad, I'll care for you. Whereas when you're angry, people are like, ooh, So, for me, my relationship with anger came with a lot of liberation. I was afraid of my anger for a long time because I also thought it was destructive, it was too much, it was too something, too whatever, you can fill in the blank, too beep. And I feel like now that I think about it, I feel like it was an entire whole process of allowing myself to be too something, allowing myself to be too much, allowing myself to be angry and feel that energy inside of my body without like snapping at everyone around me, but really just get to know that sensation physically and be like, oh, I'm getting like all like this, something's happening. And that for me was the portal to come into befriending that sensation more than the concept of anger and what I think of what anger is and what people think of me angry or like that. I was going through its energetic expression. energetic expression in my body. Like, what does anger feel like in my body, and what does it do to my thoughts? And then when I started learning more about emotional intelligence, I learned about what anger actually does for me. I was like, ooh, that's nice. Actually, I can get information from that. Now I'm angry, so I learned something about a value that I have. I learned something about that I care about, or that matters to me. And that completely shifted my relationship with it, because then I don't have to be, then anger is not aggressive towards someone anymore, but it gives me information about something that I need for my sense of safety, or for my sense of values in the world and what I stand for. And then I can find a way to communicate that in a way that feels constructive to me. So for example, if I would have something going on with a private person, then a friend or a family member, then I don't need to be like exploding with my anger. Because I found a way to understand it and to be with the sensation, learn something from it, and then I can communicate that. And it's very directional. Anger is very clear when it's there. So yes, for me there was a big process in movement, and to be able to lose my shit and go into, I just came from teaching, that's why we're here in Berlin and very close to Moritzplatz here in the middle of the city, because I just came from teaching a class here behind us, Emotions, that is called Fluent Body, a technique that was developed by a woman here in Berlin. Her name is Florencia, and she combined a technique of somatic therapy for the body and for the sensations, and also movement and music. And once I started getting into that space where I was allowed to punch in the air and to like open my body and to morph my face and all that stuff, that anger became just a sensation, more than something that I needed to be afraid of. And that's really an experience that needs to be felt. It's very difficult to learn this through the head or through it was a union between what I understand about my feelings, what I understand about emotions, and what I feel at the same time. So it was like a coming together of those two amazing abilities that we have as humans, to use our brain and to use our body, or to be with the brain and be with the body. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah.
Anger is a good, I like it. I like this. It's good.
Yeah, if you feel it. Yeah. I guess that's key.
Yeah.
Key for almost everything, to feel. Just really to feel first. Feel. And stay with it.
Yeah, and I think for me, what helps is when I have both processes also happening at the same time, when I can be in the feeling and at the same time I'm aware of what's going through my system. And I don't need to identify it right away and be like, oh, this is this and this is that, and like be very German about it. But at some point, that step for me is very necessary, and I think for a lot of people, because if we only stay in the body the entire time, and we only go from feeling, and we kind of like take the brain and we put it on the side, and we're like, this is bad, thinking is not good, then I'm gonna have difficulties using language and describing what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing to other people, so that they can also understand what I'm going through. So when it comes to relationships and to be in communication that is also non-violent, or that is without blaming and taking each other apart, then that mind part and understanding of like, okay, what's going on right now, and is this mine, or does this have something to do with you? And if yes, what? And how can I communicate that in a way that is helpful for everyone, and empowering also for everyone? And by that I mean, how can I communicate what I feel in a way that I stay in my body with it, and at the same time I can be humble with that. You know, I can say, okay, I'm having an experience right now, but that doesn't mean that someone else made a mistake, but I can take responsibility for that. So once I'm starting to befriend my sensations, and that's not just anger, that's also sadness, that's also pleasure, like everything that is also high intensity emotion. Once I'm able to be in that sensation, I can also know, you know, I have a choice on how to live with that in the moment that it's happening. And then in the relationship with someone else, I don't have to make them responsible for what I'm feeling.
But it's automatically not happening when you're taking your feelings for granted, not for granted, how do you say? When you really are aware of your feelings, then you stay with yourself, and you take responsibility for your own then in that moment.
Yeah, and at the same time, then we're back to nuances and polarities. I think it's very important to be responsible for our own feelings, and I also really truly believe in interdependence, which means that we're always in dialogue with everyone around us. So I think it's very important that we take responsibility for ourselves, and that we also take responsibility when I know I touched someone and that person is having an experience, and I can also say, hey, you know what, that thing that just happened, it something happened inside of me. So now I'm just using these examples to actually say that I think it's important to be in ourselves and stay in connection with each other, and know that we're always co-regulating and we're always co-creating something. So we I don't know if this is going too far right now. I think it's going to be a little bit complicated, but what I'm trying to say, I think, is there's always both. There's my own responsibility and my responsibility for other people. And that's for everyone. So also the person that I'm in relationship with, whoever that is, my partner or my friends or whoever, they are responsible for themselves, but they also have a responsibility for the people that they are in touch with. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
It's always both.
Thank you.
Maybe something that I would like to add?
Yes.
Can I add something?
That would be my last question anyway. A message or something.
Yeah, something that I would like to add is that the interesting part of what I just shared with you about how I was approaching my anger, or how I started accessing my anger through movement, was also the process of me getting into my, for lack of another word, female energy. So it was a softening as I was accessing that anger, which is a paradox, I think, in the concept that we have about emotions. But for me to liberate that part of myself, it allowed me to then actually be way closer to my essence, to who I am. And that doesn't mean I'm an angry person. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I was not identifying with that part anymore so much, or suppressing it. And so you know, when you're imagining that you have different parts in yourself and different energies pulling in different directions, when you bring them together, and one part that was outcast of the system who's like, no, we don't want you. And you bring them back in and you create that sense of belonging in yourself. That's when I started really like rooting in my body and my bones and my whoever I want to be. And so I'm not going to take any definitions about you need to look like this to be a woman, or you have to look like or act like this and walk like this and feel like this. Like my anger also gives me the strength to say yes and no to the things that I that I feel and that I
and to be soft means in that sense that you flow with your feelings at least.
Yes. So, and with my values.
Yes. Yeah.
With my feelings and really with with my values.
Yes.
With what I stand for in this world, for myself, for my environment, for my relationships, for what I care for in the world.
Yes.
And that to me is authentic when you really stand with that stuff, with that foundation, and in that authenticity you can be whoever you want.
Yes.
So in that authenticity, some days I'm like this and I'm here with my earrings and with my coat and I'm like in my body, and maybe tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna wear a baseball cap and a shirt and without earrings, and I'm gonna be like drinking a beer on the side of the road with my friend, and the next day who knows, I'm gonna be all dressed up again, like I think that's really what we need, is that we're cyclical beings. I know that's also important to you. We're always changing, shape-shifting all the time. So it's the most if I can say it like this, anti-feminine thing is to like put ourselves into the next role and to the next expectation of who we should be, and feel ashamed if we're not that, and just make our own decisions from like, okay, I want this to me, that resonates and that doesn't, but it doesn't mean I'm less of anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's totally okay to name it also, to say I'm a woman, to say this is female, it feels female to me, so it's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow, we got something. It feels like, okay, we were diving and now, thank you. But some last words to your work, your creation. I'd like to hear your coach, right?
Yes, I work. Now that's actually the most difficult part for me right now, is to put words on what I do. Let's say I work with humans, work with people on emotional intelligence and somatic intelligence. So that means we're harnessing feelings and name them and learn how to communicate them and to integrate them into the system, because oftentimes there's something that we don't want to feel, so we bring that back. And with that we tap into the body and the quality of how we can be with our emotions in the body, because our feelings, they come with a body sensation, with an expression, with something. That's how we relate in the world, through our feelings and through our bodies. That's it. And also language, actually. So I work with that on feelings, on the body. I teach a movement technique that I just mentioned, fluent body. I make earrings. I have a bit of a creative output in that, and also in my work. Actually, I feel more and more how my approach to work with people becomes very artistic, in a sense that I'm not attached to any outcome, because my role is not to tell anyone who to be or what's good for them or who they should be or the potential that they should have. The only thing that I'm doing is to help birth the version of yourself that you want to be.
The only thing. Like a big thing,
So the attention is not on me. The attention is on everyone that I get to work with, and in that I feel like that process is very artistic, very artsy, because you never know, you never know what's right for them, how are they going to express, what's going to happen, what are they going to say yes and no to, what's the experience that they're going to have. So yeah, I use words and movement and things, and in the end we'll see what happens.
Yep. Magic happens. Yeah. How can people reach you?
How can people reach me?
I
have an Instagram account that is just my name, Jette Schwarz. I also have a website that is, a work in progress. It's also my name, www.jetteschwarz.com.
Yeah.
And if you reach me through there's a contact form that you can reach me with your email.
Okay, yeah. I will set the link under the reel.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.